Joining us live is the former leader of the New South Wales Liberal Party, Kerry Chikarovski, for her take on where the campaign is at in the final furlong now. Kerry, first of all, I want to get your thoughts on the Prime Minister's speech yesterday at the campaign launch, which is still kind of doing my head in because the launch comes at the end of a campaign. I don't quite understand that. But anyway, what did you make of his speech yesterday?
I actually thought it was a pretty upbeat speech. I thought he was, given the fact that as you say, we're so far into the campaign, you'd figure by this stage they're all exhausted. Yeah. But he seemed to be actually very on top of it. He was, enthusiastic. He was even kind of trying to be funny, making a few jokes almost about some of the stuff that was being said about by the Labor Party. So I thought, as a performance, I think he did very well. And as you've been discussing this morning, a key policy initiative, which I think will probably resonate with people. And I think the reason why we had the launch yesterday and that key policy statement was because it is the last week and they need something to come home with the full wind in their sails.
Sure. So that's a smart ploy, you think, to keep that conversation on home ownership in the final week?
Oh, absolutely, because, obviously the Labor Party have made an issue with their own scheme. So I think the government scheme, the beauty of the government scheme as compared to the Labor Party scheme is that it's quite simplistic. It's $50,000 out of your superannuation and there's not a lot of rigmarole about how that's going to be used, how you have to apply to use that. So I think they wanted to do something which was big, which was bold, and which, to be perfectly honest, is consistent with their own political philosophy about encouraging people to look after themselves by buying their own home and perhaps using that as their superannuation when they get older and retire.
OK, well, what do you think of it? What do you think of that policy pitch? I mean, does it come with risks by a young person draining that base of their super, or could it lead to higher prices when it comes to the housing market? All these things have been canvassed this morning, but what do you think?
Oh, well, I think everyone will say that, it's going to lead to higher prices. Well, not everyone. Of course, the government doesn't believe that's the case. But I think the real crux of this issue is how do you get young people, first-home buyers, into the market? And often for first-home buyers, they have been making those compulsory superannuation payments. It's a forced payment scheme for a lot of them. So there is an opportunity for them to actually take back some of that money because, it's already been corralled without their consent, if you like. It's been corralled anyway. So it gives them the chance to actually perhaps over a few years make more contributions, which again at concessional rates, which they can actually then use to access and put into a house. And if you actually believe, as a lot of people do believe, that their greatest superannuation asset is their own home, because when they sell it, it's tax-free. If you believe that, then this idea of getting more people into their own homes as soon as they can so that they can grow that asset. And I know you had a conversation with Michael Suker earlier about, well, what if property prices drop? The thing about home ownership is most people don't go into home ownership for 2, 3 or 4 years. They go into home ownership with the idea that they will pay off their mortgage, which is often over 20 years. And once it's paid off, they've got an asset which they can then clearly sell without any tax implications in it. So I think that's why it works for the Liberal Party. That's why it works for their thinking, that they think that superannuation, home ownership is a contributor to their superannuation. And I'd just like to add, I think the idea of encouraging older people to sell their homes by giving them that $300,000 concessional superannuation contribution is another way in which reinforces that view. They see that as a way in which home ownership can be part of your superannuation. OK. 5 days to go. Kerry, what's your prediction? Oh, I know you're going to hit me because... Oh, sorry, that's the wrong thing to say. I know you're going to say that I'm being cowardly. Sorry, I'm being cowardly. But I still think it's too close to call. I mean, I've been talking to people on the ground in some of the seats where, the Labor Party think they're going to win. And or indeed the independents think they're going to win, and I'm getting a very different vibe. I mean, people are saying to me that people are actually quite positive about the Liberal Party, which is not what's being reflected in the polls, and I get that. So I still think that there is a lot of people out there who are perhaps undecided, who will make up their mind in this week. As we know, Peter, there are people who are literally making up their mind as they walk into polling booths. Sure. And that's been a trend over many years now. So I'm going to sit on the fence.
Sitting on the fence, OK. Well, I've enjoyed talking to you throughout the campaign, Kerry, so thanks very much for your insight. It's been good to have you with us. Enjoy the show.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for having me.
Final few days. Talk to you soon, Kerry.